tutors, mentors, and the city with your host.com.
The City Tutors presents
Tutors, mentors, and the city
with your host.com.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Kevin.com Brown, and thank you for joining us with Tutors, Mentors, and the City. Please join me in welcoming our guests, Miss Nariman, Heikal. Hey!
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk with you today.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me, Nariman. So what kind of name is Nariman? Where is that from?
It's interesting. I was named after the last queen of Egypt before it became a republic. My dad was a big history buff, so he gave me that name. My family originates from Egypt, and I'm actually the first in my family to be born in America and to be a citizen.
That is cool. That is cool. Okay. So, born in America. Where were you born?
I was actually born here in New York. I was born in New York City. My parents had been in the U.S. for just a couple of years. And I'm actually the oldest in all of my family. So you can imagine, the first in my family to go to college and graduate from college. That was really a big responsibility, being the eldest and the firstborn, in terms of kind of continuing to carry that legacy and helping to turnkey that knowledge to my younger brothers and sisters and cousins.
Yes. Okay. So how many siblings?
I'm the oldest of 5. I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters, and we're all very wildly different.
Okay, that's great. And so your family comes to New York. What borough did they choose?
Queens. So, there's a big Arab population in Queens. Of course, the demographics have shifted over the last couple of years, but there's still a very strong Egyptian American community in Astoria. So we were kind of in the Astoria, kind of Jackson Heights area for a while, and that's where my family got our start.
And you went to school in Queens?
I actually bounced around a lot. So I went to school in Queens. I went to school in Manhattan. I bounced around a bunch of different places. I went to school on Long Island, went to school in North Carolina. I went to 3 different high schools, one in Long Island, one in Queens. And then I finished out my high school degree in North Carolina. But just bouncing around.
Bouncing around now. So life is about perspective. Looking back with your perspective, was bouncing around a good thing or a bad thing for you?
Well, I think about that a lot because I'm a parent now. And as a parent, I want to, the first person in my family to have a college degree and the first in my family to have a professional job. I think a lot about the privileges that creates, not only for myself, but the way that it's changed my entire family trajectory and how, it unlocks a lot of doors for my daughter. And, when I think about what I want to provide for my child, I'm very much about stability. I commute 45 minutes, sometimes an hour to keep my daughter at the same school. But reflecting back on the bouncing around, I think in my own childhood, I'm really grateful for it. I mean, it was definitely really difficult for a lot of reasons, but it helped me kind of understand the world through many different lenses and kind of develop a multicultural context that I use every day. That helps me kind of, approach the work, especially in doing work that supports communities and serves others. I'm really fortunate that, I've had the chance to work and figure out how to survive and thrive, in urban areas, in suburban areas, sometimes rural. So I'm really appreciative of the context and the different tools that it's given me to help navigate just different spaces.
Okay, so what did a young bouncing around Nariman do for fun?
Well, when you have a million brothers and sisters and cousins, and your parents are strict, you're not really allowed to have a lot of friends. So we didn't really hang out with a lot of friends because we had each other. But I know that as soon as I was able to work, I went to work. So that was a really kind of empowering thing that I had access to. So I went to work as soon as I could. I started out like a lot of people in the food service industry. My first job was at McDonald's. And then I went over to Taco Bell. But I'll tell you, like, I was the best drive-through girl in like all of the Raleigh area. I'll tell you that. Like that experience. So, it honestly, like, my fun was at work because I was an AP student in high school, and academics was always like very central in my family. So I went to school and then I went to work. I was able to somehow figure out a way to like maintain a 4.0 GPA and work 40 hours a week at McDonald's and Taco Bell. So when I wasn't in school, I was behind the register. And those experiences, I think, really helped me understand like just the vast difference that certain opportunities and ultimately a college degree can really help unlock for kids who come from low income backgrounds.
What did you get your college degree in?
So I was very fortunate enough to graduate from the University of North Carolina, and I earned a degree in global studies, focusing on global health and the Middle East. I, like a lot of people, like, that's not what I'm doing today. But it was a very formative experience and a very transformative one that helped kind of like lead me to what I have the privilege of doing today.
So you look so young. You already mentioned you have a child or children. I'm not sure which one you said, but you look too young to have children. You look too young to have graduated from college. So that's
really nice to hear.
So when I say to you, what did you do after college? I don't know if you graduated yesterday or 10 years ago, because you look so young.
Well, that's really nice. Thank you. That's the highlight of my day. I just turned 30. I turned 30 last fall. And I will say, like, that was a really big milestone to navigate. I know in a lot of spaces, I'm oftentimes the youngest. I worked really hard, and I've had some really great mentors who have kind of led me to access the opportunities that I've been fortunate enough to access. But even though I find myself being the youngest in a lot of spaces, as a first generation student and the eldest in my family, the daughter of immigrants, it's a common experience to like feel the weight and the responsibility of the like beyond your years. So although, I know that I am one of the youngest, in nonprofit leadership, and I'm one of the youngest kind of like doing this in the industry, in a lot of ways, I'm really fortunate for like that background of having to be the first and the pressures of the eldest from an immigrant family, because it really helps you like prioritize, and it helps you learn how to hustle. So, I feel like without those opportunities and that background, like I may not have had what it takes to make it to a leadership position like so young in the game. I know I'm very lucky in that way.
Okay, so what's the first gig you got right after college? What did you do right after college?
Yeah, so I thought I was gonna go into the Peace Corps because I was studying international studies. I was like really into public health. And then I studied abroad, and I actually went to my home country. I went to Egypt because I wanted to get closer to like my language and my culture, my history, my religion. And I got there and I was like, I can't be this far away from the States. Like, I have a certain standard for how I want to have a nail salon, how I want to get my eyebrows done. Like, I can't be out here living in the Middle East. Like, no shade. Obviously, it's a beautiful, magical place. I just couldn't be that far away from like my family and where I grew up. And and that experience, I think like it was a point, like I think a lot of young people get to this point where they're having like their existential crisis. And especially for those of us with like an immigrant background, you know, a lot of times you think like, you know, you might feel like, I don't identify with Americans. And then also like, I don't really identify with like the like native cultural group. So going to Egypt was really like that experience for me, because I really never felt like I belonged with like my American friends. So I went to Egypt kind of with the hopes of like, okay, I'm going to kind of like rediscover my roots. And I went over there and I was like, I actually feel like I can't really relate to the communities here. I relate more to like first generation young people living back home. So that was a really pivotal experience that helped me kind of make that decision to ground myself locally. And so from there, because education was a main foundation in my family, and definitely earning that college degree has always been instilled in me by my parents, like, this is the tool that is going to help elevate you. And, you know, folks can take things from you. They can take your voice, your money, your power, but they can't take your education. And that really always like resonated with me as a young person. So I went into teaching. I was recruited into Teach for America, and I was really fortunate enough to serve as a middle school teacher in Newark, New Jersey. So, you know, after I moved to North Carolina when I was in high school. I got a full ride, need-based scholarship to graduate, to like have my, you know, complete my studies at the University of North Carolina. A lot of people can't say this, but I graduated debt-free. And then I left North Carolina and I went straight to Newark. And for a first generation college graduate and somebody who was in a lot of ways like sheltered, you know, the first time that I like slept outside of my family home was when I moved into my dorm. Moving away from my family, being on my own, and then having to navigate a completely new community was really, really tough. But I'm very fortunate for the opportunity. I fell in love with Newark. I still live in New Jersey, even though, you know, I now work for an organization and serve young people in New York City. But there's definitely something very, very special about the city of Newark. So that place forever holds a place in my heart. But I was teaching sixth grade, which is a really awkward time.
Yeah. So you had a international experience. You came up in an international network. That is very fascinating. I want to circle back. I want to circle back to Egypt. Now, Egypt is in Africa or Asia?
Egypt is a North African country.
North African country. Okay. So what, as a young woman born in New York, you go to Egypt. What language are they speaking, and were you fluent at it?
Yeah. So we speak Arabic. There are other languages spoken there, like, you know, Western languages like English and French. But the main language is Arabic. I grew up speaking Arabic, although I identify with English as my first language. It's my stronger language and the language that I'm most comfortable in. But I knew how to read and write Arabic. You know, when I went there, obviously, like my language skills got better. But yeah, aside from speaking English and Arabic, I also am like, have always been very in love with Spanish. So I'm really fortunate to be able to say that I'm multilingual, and as a youth practitioner and somebody doing the work, definitely being able to navigate different cultures and speaking different languages has been a super helpful tool in terms of like, you know, expanding the ability to serve others.
Okay, so you're in Egypt You speak the language, so that's not the awkwardness. And you had mentioned about the nail salons and the things like that. Describe Egypt? I've never been. A lot of our viewers have never been. What is it like? What is it like when you land there? What was your experiences?
Well, it was interesting because I had been to Egypt as a kid, like during summers with my grandma. My parents were actually undocumented for most of my life. I actually never even knew that my parents were undocumented until like a couple years ago. But so I had been to Egypt before as a kid, but this was the first time as like a young adult that I'm really going there on my own and like carving a space out for myself. And it was actually on the heels of the Arab Spring. So it was like right after the 2011 uprisings and the revolution that started in Cairo. So I was nervous. My family was nervous. But I also was really excited about like the self-discovery journey that I was about to embark on. When you get to Egypt, you get into the airport. I think the first thing that like hits you is like the smell of cigarettes because they can smoke indoors. There's cigarette smoke everywhere. That was different. But I think one of the big differences and kind of like the stark differences, I think, for me to navigate as an Egyptian American living there was just like how big the divide is between the haves and the have-nots. Like if you are in Egypt, it is the way that it is culturally and socially and economically, politically. Most likely the social class that you're born in is the social class that you're going to die in, right? Like if you're born poor, like there, unfortunately, even with centralized free public education, like most likely you are not going to have access to opportunities to help you kind of like boost up that social class mobility. And that was one of the main differences. Here we talk about like the American dream, the American promise a lot. And don't get me wrong, the system is broken and there's a lot that needs to be fixed. And yet, that's what this country in a lot of ways was built on. It was built on like people coming here to seek opportunity and to like escalate and gain that mobility. And like, again, while it's not perfect here by far, and a lot of work still needs to be done, we all have a responsibility in that. As an American, I do see the value in, there are opportunities that exist for a lot of young people and a lot of like really cool innovations that people are launching off the ground to help people like me, first generation kids of immigrants, first in their families to go to college, to like help kind of navigate some of these barriers. It's not enough. There's still a lot that we need to do, but that was one of the things that stuck out to me is that, in this country, in the US, it is possible to find that social mobility.
When you came to the realization you're out there, first of all, how long did you stay out there?
I was there for almost a year.
Okay, so you come to the realization this isn't the place for me, right? Who do you talk to? What was it a now I have to call somebody and get out of here? What was the moment like?
Well, luckily, and it kind of played out this way. Like it was like the end of my program. So it's not like I had to leave. Like it was already coming to an end and I still had another year of college to kind of figure things out. That's something that I look back on. Like when you asked, like, who did I have to talk to? I don't know, like not anyone really. And that's really kind of why I love doing what I do here at iMentor, like helping young people like cultivate social capital and connect with different folks across cultures, across backgrounds, across industry. When I was like making these decisions, I had my family who have always been really supportive, but in a lot of ways they couldn't relate because I was having new experiences that like my parents had never experienced. And nobody in my family had come across yet. I mean, now, yeah, a couple generations in and a couple of like college graduates and professionals out, those who are coming up newly in the family, they have a lot of us to tap into. But as the first, like, I didn't really have that at home. You know, even though our folks, they are really committed and they want to support in any way they can, there are a lot of things that they just can't relate to or understand because they didn't have that lived experience. I think like navigating spaces at my college, you know, was hard. I was at a predominantly white institution, and it was hard to kind of like find professors that I related to, or that made me feel comfortable. I think like sought support in groups of my peers, which I think there is something powerful in that we were able to kind of like build a community to like, and to support one another. And at the same time, they were going through stuff at the same time that I was going through stuff. So it's not like they really had like the foresight to like be able to give me good advice. We were kind of just like going at things, you know, at the same time and just trying things out and failing and learning from it. So, I mean, to that point, like, yeah, I wish I had mentors. I wish I had like a network. Now that I do this work, it's all that I think about. And definitely, you know, in doing the work, have come to like really learn it myself, so that now anytime I'm thinking about approaching a problem or thinking about embarking on a new journey, I'm going to reach out to like other folks. And if I don't know somebody, then I'm going to ask, because there's always somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody.
So let's dig in. You mentioned iMentor. Tell myself and our viewers who you are, what you do at iMentor.
Yeah, so I run the post-secondary success program at iMentor in New York City. iMentor is a nonprofit. We're almost 25 years old. We're a nonprofit that partners with high schools in the Department of Education to provide a one-to-one mentor for every student in the school, in the high school. So we start in 11th grade, and we partner each young person with a mentor who lives or works in New York City. And that's really powerful. We're a whole school model, which means that we don't discriminate against, you know, what your GPA is or, you know, what your interests are. We work with every single young person, which is a really transformational thing for the school culture, because everybody is a part of it. It's a movement. So we do, so part of that programming, we do weekly lessons that really center around your post-secondary planning and like developing your social capital, and just what your career goals are, in and monthly meetings with your mentor. And you meet every month, sometimes more than once. And you kind of like, through this programming and the support of a program manager, you build a relationship, and you're able to cultivate a relationship over the 2 years that you're matched together in high school. Once you graduate from high school, you and your mentor have the option of continuing in the post-secondary program, which is what I lead. And from there, our team continues to support your persistence journey, because we know that for a first generation, you know, young person, first in their family to go to college, really navigating a lot of the red tape and a lot of these institutional barriers, while having the support of your family and your loved ones and your school, and now your one-to-one mentor, is really valuable. We know that like our young people can get into college, but the hard part is persisting through college. And that's where we see like a lot of our support kind of kick in, not just around continuing to foster that one-to-one mentorship, but also in cultivating partnerships with colleges, and other organizations like City Tutors that helps our young people continue to build out their village as young adults. So I've been with iMentor since 2015. I started as a program manager, teaching the curriculum and providing peer support to our young people back in 2015. And I've been really fortunate to kind of learn and grow and have mentors of my own at iMentor over the last couple of years. And now I'm over on the post-secondary side, where we support almost 2,000 young people and their one-to-one mentors across the city.
Outstanding. So you are a boss. That's pretty impressive. Use the
I'm
term.
a boss in progress. A boss in progress. I still have a lot to learn, and I'm still soaking up everything that I can.
Okay. Well, tell your position that. Tell your office that. Tell your salary that. So you use the term social capital.
Yeah.
I know the meaning of social. I know the meaning of capital. I've never heard them put together. What is social capital?
Yeah. The idea of social capital is really aimed at being really strategic about the ways that we think about networks. A lot of times, you can think about networks in a couple different ways. You've got your bonding networks. So those are your people who are in your direct community, like the people who you're around all the time. So for a lot of young people, that's like the people in your community, the people in your school, the people at home, the people in your neighborhood. And then we think about bridging networks. And when we think about bridging networks, those relationships take a little bit more work because they don't happen organically, because they're not with the people who are around you and the people who are in your immediate circles, but it's that intentional kind of like reaching out across aisles and lines of difference to help build and foster like a more collective understanding and support. And so one of the really cool things about our work at iMentor is that we get to not only help continue to build on the existing bonding networks, because we work in a school and we support within the community, but we get to help build and nurture these bridging networks. And so when I started, back in 2015 with my first cohort of 100 or so high school students, a lot of our students at the time were recent immigrants, so they had never even left the Bronx, and they hadn't left their neighborhoods because as a teenager, why would you? You go to school every day. If you have a job, it's mostly local, and the people who are around you are likely, because of a lot of different factors, the people who look like you, who speak like you, who eat like you, who are within your cultural group. So a lot of what we do is around building those networks and branching out across sides. So for a lot of our young people who are matched with mentors in their very first year, that was a really transformational experience, because for them, it was maybe the first time that they were working with somebody who worked in Manhattan, and they got to go visit their office and kind of explore that side of corporate culture. I mean, for me, thinking back on my experience, the first time I probably visited a work office was when I first got this job at iMentor. Before that, I was a teacher, and the women in my family stayed at home, and the men were cab drivers. So social economic class really does dictate like what kinds of spaces you have access to and thus exposure. And then similarly for mentors, for a lot of mentors, I mean, they're busy, they're professionals, they're going to work, and maybe some of them are not New York City natives, they're transplants from other places. And for a lot of our mentors, it's the first time that they get to explore and support and contribute to a different part of New York, which is really powerful, because we've got like thousands of New Yorkers, both young, and older professionals, who are having these really transformative experiences and building these relationships, and then going back to their dinner tables, going back to their families, going back to their friends, talking about like another culture, another language, a new cuisine, new ways of thinking and living. And I think as a whole, iMentor and like groups like iMentor and City Tutor in a lot of ways help to like transform that like collective thinking of an entire city. I mean, look how many thousands of volunteers and young people we have the privilege of working with every day, and just helping to kind of create more of an open-minded dialogue. And then through that, like our young people have access to opportunities and knowledge that they might not have had access to before. We say a lot, like, it's not only about what you know, but it's about who you know. And I truly do believe that, as somebody who, like, this has directly benefited from like intentional like cultivation of social capital and being really intentional about how to grow my network just from outside people who are my same age or my same race or speak my same language or live in the same area code, like reaching across differences and bridging across like relationships has really helped to like open different doors and help me learn and understand things that I might not have had the access to. So that's kind of what I mean around like social capital. Like, it's not enough to have a degree a lot of times, and it's not enough to be the best at what you do. Unfortunately, in this society and the way that things are built, like, it's also about who you know. And in order for us to really level the playing field for our first generation young people, we really have to think about how are we connecting them to people that can help them kind of harness the talents and the raw skills that they already possess and like unlock these doors. Because that is a barrier that is preventing a lot of us from reaching our highest potential.
Okay, great. So I'm going to take us down to, well, first of all, thank you so much for your time. And I appreciated you and I. We were having some conflict as far as scheduling the date and whatever, so we finally got here. But so I appreciate your time, and I'm not going to hold you too long. So I'm going to hit you with this as my last question. You work for iMentor. You work with thousands of young people. You've been a young person yesterday. You have a young one in your life. You have a lot of young siblings. What's the best advice that you have garnered that you can offer in an elevator pitch? What's the best elevator pitch advice you can give to a young person?
Well, this is something that I think like that I've like slowly been developing in my subconscious for the last couple of years, thinking about my experience as a first generation college student at a PWI, and then, getting into the like youth development nonprofit industry, which like is not very popular in my community. Like, you don't see a lot of like Arabs like working in the nonprofit sector. And that's mainly because of exposure. We need to do more on that. But recently, this is kind of personal, but I'll share it because it's been a really great learning experience for me. I actually underwent a bariatric surgery. So I had weight loss surgery about a year ago. And I lost 100 pounds. And that was not just, it wasn't something that I did to like look better or be skinny, but it was something that I had to do for my health. And like, as a parent, somebody who became a parent like during the pandemic, that it was like a really big kind of wake up call that I wanted to like be healthy and be able to like be a good parent and be around for my daughter. So I went through that surgery. And it took a lot of willpower, and it took a lot of, because that's just a tool, like that doesn't solve your problems, and it doesn't like help you build good habits. It's just a tool so that you then could use that to build the good habits and like work on some of your bad habits. And if I've learned anything from that experience, it's that you will always have like negative self-talk. You will always have a negative voice in your head that tells you you can't do something or you're not good enough, especially if you're a young woman of color navigating a system that was not built with you in mind. And that goes, I think, in all areas, at work, at school, on a personal journey, like a weight loss journey. But what I have learned and what this journey has really like validated and uplifted for me is, despite the negative talk, you have to just like talk back to it. And anytime I have like a negative idea or like a negative thought crosses my mind, like I can't do it, I'm not smart enough, I don't belong here, I'm not good enough, then I realize that I'm saying that, and then I have to talk back to myself and say that's not true. Like, you can do it. Just do it. Just try. You can go, I started working out, and when I think like I can't do it, just one more 0.1 of a mile, until, I've reached my goal. And that attitude really started to bleed into my both professional and personal life. So if it was one piece of advice I could give, it is to be intentional about talking back to that negative self-talk, because even if you are faking it till you make it, you can bring your own positivity, to kind of like talk back and talk down like that negative self-talk that probably like nobody was even thinking about you in the first place, and that's just like your own insecurity. So yeah, I think for me that's been a practice that I've developed over the last year, and something that I've been really intentional about doing every day.
Excellent, Nariman. I really appreciate that response, and once again, I appreciate your time. I typically close out with, even though I said that was the last question, I typically close out with this: did we leave anything out?
I mean, thank you. It's been such I was really nervous to like have this conversation, but you made it like so natural, and organic. So I had a lot of fun. I mean, I would just say this, like, considering the work that our organizations do, it is our social responsibility, across this city to like support one another and build a better future for our young people. I think like sometimes folks get really wrapped up in their day to day, and they think like, what is little old me gonna do to like fix an injustice, or what can I, like, nothing, I'm just an ordinary person. That's not true. You can give advice, you could mentor, you could like, invite someone to come over to your office and have a tour. You can connect somebody to somebody else who might have the expertise they're looking for. And I would just like urge folks to think about what is the small, low lift, everyday kind of thing that they could do to help pay it forward and help like support our village, because it is impossible to do it on your own. And when you think about all of the different barriers that like our young people face across all the intersections of their identity, like it is near impossible to do it on your own. We depend on each other. And the smallest kind of like lift, the smallest thing that you could do to like help provide that opportunity for somebody else is going to go a really long way, even if you don't think that it is a big deal or something that's going out of your way.
Excellent. Thank you again so much, Nariman. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. We'll talk soon.